Welcome to another Os Abloy Academy webinar. Today's webinar is going to be on Rixson's floor closers. My name is Russell Corriveau, and I will be your lead instructor today. This session should last about 45 minutes. During this session, your lines will be muted. However, you can pose questions as we go along using the question and answer icon at the bottom of the page, and we will save time at the end of the presentation for your questions. This session is being recorded and will be available for viewing within 24 hours. Also within 24 hours, you will receive an email showing your proof of attendance that can be submitted to your employer or one of the industry association partners, such as DHI or ALOA, for industry CEUs in lieu of a certificate of completion for these short trainings. In addition, Os Abloy Academy has over 50 online courses that are all available at no cost. To get started, simply create an Os Abloy Academy account and begin learning at your own pace. Today, we're going to look at Rixson closers. Rixson is known for making floor closers and pivots, but they also make overhead concealed closers. When you're trying to decide the right closer for an application, there are many things to consider. Is it the main entrance or the main door of a building? Does the door need to swing 90 degrees or 180 degrees? How often is the door going to be used? How heavy is the door? These are just a few of the items that need to be considered when determining what is the best method for hanging the door. When choosing between a door closer and a pivot, the most important question is, does it need to be self-closing? If the answer is yes, a door closer is the correct product. Pivots that hang doors are not self-closing. If the door weighs more than 250 pounds, a floor closer is your best option. Overhead concealed closers are ideal for lighter doors where concealment above the door is desired. With center hung floor closers, only a top pivot is used. And if offset hung applications, they also use a top pivot, but it is also recommended that you use an intermediate pivot located at the center of the door. Perfect applications for Rixson floor closers would be extra heavy duty or extra heavy doors, lead line doors, thick doors, high frequency doors, doors subject to a lot of abuse, where security is your top priority, and where beauty is a factor. Here are some of the advantages of floor closers. More efficient, since the door is attached directly to the main arm of the closer, ensures longer life for the door and the frame assembly. The weight of the door is on the floor opposed to the frame. Lower maintenance. Greater weight bearing capacity. Vertical adjustment capability, which you don't have with hinges. That means you can adjust the door up and down with floor closers, which you cannot do with continuous hinges or regular hinges. Aesthetically far more pleasing. And the only major drawback when it comes to floor closers is that you need to plan ahead. The floor closer must be prepped to accept the floor. The floor must be prepped to accept the floor closer, and the door needs to be prepped to accept the floor closer opposed to hinges. So we're first going to look at Rixson's heavy-duty floor closers. Here you can see some insulation for an offset floor closers and pivots. As you can see, the pivot point is located on the outer surface of the door, and that's how you know it's an offset pivot. A few more advantages when it comes to floor closers include the floor closer offers the highest efficiency of any type of door closer. The dead stop is built into the closer and is not a feature of the arm with a standard surface mounted door closer. Hold open holds open at the same spot as the dead stop. You also have longer life. adjustable spring power, just like with all door closers. And it uses a torsion spring in lieu of a compression spring. Surface door closers use compression springs. This uses a large torsion spring. There are typically 3 points of contact with an offset closer and only 2 points of contact with a center hung closer. Offset and center hung closers come with top pivots standard. Intermediate pivots are recommended or required, but are not supplied standard. These photos show a good example of how an offset pivot and how a center hung pivot closer looks. The image on the left shows an offset floor closer, and the image on the right shows a center hung closer. When discussing offset floor closers, the standard offset is 3/4 of an inch. The pivot point is located 3/4 of an inch from the heel of the door and 3/4 of an inch from the face of the door. Some of the floor closers are available with an 1.5 inch offset. The pivot point is still 3/4 of an inch from the heel of the edge of the door, but it's an 1.5 inch from the surface of the door. This is used in applications where you have, it's not used in applications for thick doors or solid doors. It's used in applications where you have a facade attached to the face of the door. And the 1.5 inch offset allows you to mount the screws coming in from the bottom into the solid part of the door and not the facade of the door. And that's where you would normally use an 1.5 inch offset. One other thing to remember is attaching an offset affects the opening of the door. You must use a door wider than 36 inches to get a minimum 32-inch clear width as required by ADA and egress doors with an 1.5 inch offset door. So keep in mind, if you are using an 1.5 inch offset door, you need a door greater than 36 inches to get the minimum 32 inches clear. Okay. As part of this course, we're going to see what it takes to install a floor closer in various applications. The first video I'm going to show you is what it takes to prepare a concrete floor for an offset floor closer.
For installing a floor closer, the most accurate and least expensive way is to make the closer cavity after the door frame is set. For a new or existing slab installation, the walls are up and the frame is in place. The most important thing for any door installation, whether it is using pivots and floor closers or hinges and surface closers, is making sure the frame is completely square. In this stage of construction, correction of a bad frame alignment is easier to remedy than checking after the doors bind or the finished flooring is in place. Never assume that the frame is square and plumb. Verify it. Use the product template and QuickSpotter pivot locator to mark off the location of the pivot or floor closer spindle. In this example, a 3/4 inch offset floor closer is being installed. Mark the dimensions 3/4 inch from the inside of the frame and 3/4 inch in front of the frame. Referring to the blocking instructions and product template, you will add 1 inch extra space around and under for the cutout. Be aware that on offset hung products, the hole will be cut under the frame. The drilling spot should be very clearly marked. It is then sprayed with clear coat so the lines will not be erased by foot traffic. This step allows the floor preparation to be done later, perhaps by other tradesmen. The fastest way to create the hole is a core driller. This piece of equipment is common on job sites, so its use can be easily worked into the door hanging schedule. This video shows the use of the driller, but it can also be done by a pavement breaking hammer. Here the drill operator will determine the size of the boring bit that he feels is better suited. A larger one will make very fast work of the bulk of the hole, but the amount remaining will take more jackhammer time. He has decided to use the smaller bit. The slide of the rig is marked for the depth needed to accommodate the closer cement case. With the cooling water of the core driller, there's a lot less dust than when a jackhammer is used. Once the drilling is done, the jackhammer finishes off the job. If rebar is inside the hole, it must be removed to make way for the cement case. Even though you are cutting rebar, the cement case installation bars will replace them. Verify that the hole is adequate for the cement case, leaving space on all 5 surfaces for the setting concrete. Install the closer body in the cement case. Attach the leveling straps. Using the pivot locator, again, drop the closer into the cavity and line it up. Use the jam portion of the top pivot and an alignment tool with a plumb bob to continue the final placement of the closer.
That gives you an idea of what it takes to install a floor closer in a cement floor that's already existing. And we will be seeing partial videos throughout this presentation. Now we're going to take a few minutes and look at Rixson's offset heavy-duty floor closers. The 27 is their most popular floor closer. It can handle weights up to 450 pounds and it has a positive dead stop. The 27-180 is like the 27, except it allows the door to swing a full 180 degrees. The 20 series closer is designed to handle doors up to 200 pounds, and it will also allow the door to swing 180 degrees. The 20 series was designed for retrofit work, not so much new construction. These closers are all handed and are allowed and they do allow for vertical adjustment. The 127 closer is for applications where vertical movement of the door installation is not possible. Such areas such as where the door is inset or has a very, very low ceiling. The 127 has a tapered spindle and a unique bottom arm. And the unique bottom arm allows the door closer not to have to be lifted up to be able to remove it. The 427 is used where vertical movement is impossible, just like the 127. Unlike the 127, it also has a tapered spindle and a unique bottom arm. However, the bottom arm pivot is different than used because the 427 uses the 427 top arm, because would be used in areas where you have no ceiling, where the ceiling is right where the door ends, so you can't lift the door up into it. So this allows it to be mounted on the surface. Okay, these two are for very, very heavy doors. The L27 is used for lead line doors, heavy or high traffic doors, and has additional thrust bearings for heavier loads. The L27 180 is like the L27, except it allows the closer to open the door to 180 degrees. Since these closer arms are made for lead line doors, you'll notice that the mounting screw hole locations straddle the center of the arm, where the lead lining will be located in the door. This prevents the mounting screws from interfering with the lead lining in the door. The HM27 is designed for stock doors with standard 4.5-inch door preps. The H27 closer uses special 4.5-inch hinges with a 3/4 inch offset because the door closer has a 3/4 inch offset. These hinges are unique due to the offset, and standard hinges will not work with the HM27. The HM27 is going to be used with a standard hollow metal frame and a standard hinge frame preps, with the advantage of having the floor closer controlling the door. The Q27 and the QT27 are designed for applications where the surface mounted bottom arm is preferred. This type of arm allows the closer to be removed without dismounting the door. The Q27 ships with a floor plate for threshold applications, and the QT27 does not include the floor plate. Next, we're going to take a look at what it takes to install
and secure it tightly with the supplied screws. Attach the leveling straps to the top of the closer with screws. With a framing square, check to make certain the door frame is square at both top and bottom corners. Install the jam leaf of the top pivot onto the header. Slide the aligning tool insert into the frame portion of the top pivot and tighten it with the provided Allen wrench. Slip the aligning tool body over the insert and tighten it. Insert the plumb line through the pivot alignment body and pull an adequate amount of line to allow the bob to almost reach the floor. Make sure the frame is square again by measuring the distance from the line to the inside of the frame at the top and bottom. Also, measure from the outside of the frame, bottom and top. Lower the closer into the floor, suspended by the straps. Place the pivot locator over the spindle and move the closer into position adjacent to the frame. Position the closer so that the center of the spindle is aligned with the plumb bob. Confirm that the cement case is square to the opening. Insert the leveling screws. Place the bubble level on top of the spindle. Make sure the body is level by using the leveling screws. Double check with the torpedo level. When the closer is accurately aligned, pour quick dry cement into the cavity. You'll need enough to completely fill the gap beneath the closer case and attain a depth of approximately 1/2 inch up from the bottom of the case. While the cement sets, attach all needed hardware to the door. First, install the door portion of the top pivot. Install the door portion of the intermediate pivot. Next, attach the bottom arm to the underside of the door. Once the cement has set, it will be time to hang the door. Remove installation tools. Place the spacer washer on the spindle. Position the door above the closer and lower the arm onto the spindle. Use a crescent wrench to rotate the spindle while moving the door back and forth. After a few twists, the door should work its way down onto the spindle. Align the door and frame portions of the top pivot. Install the pivot pin with the hole aiming downward. Push the pin up into the jam portion of the pivot. Screw the cap onto the pivot. The cap holds the pin in place. Prop the door open at 90 degrees. Slip the jam section of the intermediate pivot into the corresponding door-mounted part of the pivot. Now, fasten the jam section to the frame. To do this may require you to temporarily create additional separation between the door and the frame. Notice how the installer in the video is putting a moderate amount of torque on the pry bar to create a bigger gap between the door and jam. The pivot should now snap into place. Allow the door to close. All of the weight should be resting on the bottom arm. To ensure this, we utilize the intermediate pivot. First, remove the cap on the intermediate pivot. There is an Allen screw inside the pivot. Turning this screw raises the door. Two 1/16 inch C shims are provided. Fill the gap between the arm and spindle washer with one or both. The flat inner edge of the shim should contact the flat side of the spindle. Tap the shim into place underneath the closer arm. Relieve the weight from the intermediate pivot by turning the adjusting screw in a counterclockwise direction. This will lower the door to rest on the closer. This is very important because the weight of the door needs to be on the closer, not on the intermediate pivot and jamb. Replace the pivot cap. Take a look at the gap between the door and frame. The gap should be consistent along the entire perimeter. Tighten the arm locking screw until you actually feel it contact the spindle. Open the door again and let it close. Move the door back and forth while completely tightening the arm locking screw. Now it's time to fine-tune the closer control valves for optimal door performance. The latch speed valve controls the door during the last 10 degrees of travel prior to latching. A door's travel speed at this point is critical to overcome weather stripping, latch bolts, and stack pressures. The closing speed valve controls the door from full open to about 10 degrees. You will want to set this to a speed you feel most comfortable with. The back check valve adjusts the amount of hydraulic resistance that begins at about 70 degrees in the opening cycle. Back check should never be turned to a point where it acts as a dead stop for the door. The closer in this installation has a selective hold open feature that allows the door to be a hold open or non-hold open model. Always adjust the closing speed first. Next, set the latch speed, and finally, back check. These valves are very sensitive. Slight adjustments will generally do the trick.
That video gives you a good idea of what it takes to install an offset floor closer. I'm not showing you the entire video because of the length of time we have. What I'm showing you next are the offset top pivot options. So these are the different top pivots that are available to be used with the offset floor closers. This chart and all the charts I'm going to show you are taken from the back of the Rixson catalog. So I'm not expecting you to memorize it. I just want you to realize that they have very comprehensive charts in the back of their catalog. And this would be the intermediate pivots, and it shows you all the intermediate pivots and what they would be used for. They're also, if you need to have the door electrified, when you're using an offset floor closer, you run the electricity through the intermediate pivot, which is the pivot at the center of the door. And these are available for this. You can get them for up to 12 wires running through the door. And here we're just showing you the complete list, and we've just ran through all these floor closers, but the complete list of heavy-duty floor closers. There's a few options in the upper right-hand corner I wanted to point out, and there's the F for a fire-rated, CW for cold weather fluid, and -20 would stand for a 20-minute rated door. And there are other optional features that you can see at the very top there. Sealed closer is designated as SC. If you want the delayed action, which holds the door open for about 20 seconds, and it's great for interior doors where you're bringing a lot of carts and gurneys through, that's specified as DA. And they also have a physical handicap option specified as PH. Okay, now we're going to talk about center hung floor closers for a few minutes. The pivot point for center hung floor closers is hung on the center of the door's thickness. The pivot point can be moved closer to the lock edge because it doesn't have to be exactly in one spot, as long as both the top pivot and the floor closer are adjusted to the same location. These will use an open case frame, so these frames will not have stops built into them. Center hung floor closers can also be single acting or double acting. For single acting applications, a stop on the frame will be needed to be applied because there's not a built-in stop at the center. And depending on the depth of the frame, the door is limited in the amount of swing, normally to about 130 degrees. And center hung floor closers cannot be used on fire rated doors, and they're really not recommended for residents. Here we're showing you a few more of them. With floor closers, with center hung floor closer sets, it includes a top pivot, the floor closer, and all the hardware for a center hung closer. Double acting, as I said, they can be either double acting or single acting. And once again, not available for fire rated doors. Okay, one nice thing with center hung floor closers is you have more options available for them. Because you think about it, notice there were no offset closers for, there were no offset floor closers for glass doors. But we do have center hung offset door closers, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Okay, the 28 series center hung closer is single acting and can handle doors up to 350 pounds. For very heavy doors, we suggest you go to the H28 that will handle doors up to 1,000 pounds. The EH28 closer can handle doors up to 500 pounds, and this would be used for a door that needs to be electrified. You run the wires up through the door closer since there's no intermediate pivot used here. All three of these closers are non-handed and have built-in dead stops, separate closing valves, latching valves, and back check valves. And they do all have a selectable hold open feature. Always be aware of the door height, especially with center hung floor closers. For really tall doors, Rixson recommends that you use offset floor closers. And here we're showing you the 328 and the 428 closers, and these are center hung specialty floor closers for glass doors. They are both single acting and handed, and they can be used for exterior or interior doors. For both of them do use patch fittings, and they can handle doors up to about 325 pounds, 38 inches wide, 8 feet tall. The difference between the 328 is that the 328 does not include a top arm or, does not include an arm or a top pivot. This closer is designed to be used with patch fittings by others. Okay. Both closers have built-in dead stops, which will prevent the door from swinging beyond the desired point of opening, and you do need to specify that when you're ordering it at either 85, 90, 95, or 105 degrees. They are available with a non-hold open or a selectable hold open feature. Once again, not available on fire rated doors. So the 428 patch fittings will accept tempered glass from 3/8 of an inch up to 1/2 of an inch. So the 428 is the one that comes with the patch fittings and handle glass 3/8 of an inch up to 1/2 of an inch. And once again, here I'm showing you the center hung top pivots and the different selections available for the different Rixson closers. The next one we're going to take a quick look at is independently hung closers. Uses a concealed floor closer for controlling the door, but the door is going to be hung on butt hinges, pocket hinges, or continuous hinges. For this closer, a standard 1 3/4 inch door thickness, this can be used on a standard 1 3/4 inch thick door only. This door closer, unlike the other floor closers, does not support the weight of the door. Okay, it's the hinges that is going to support the weight of the door. The F327 is for interior or exterior applications and doors up to 4 feet wide and for doors up to 250 pounds. Maximum swing would be 90 degrees on this, and we do recommend that you use a stop by others. The hanging means must be specified when ordering. So when you order this floor closer, you must tell us if you're going to be using it with butt hinges, concealed hinges, or continuous hinges. Next, we're going to take a few minutes and take a look at what it takes to install a center hung floor closers. And once again, I'm not showing you the entire videos. I'm just showing you the most critical portions.
Unlike the offset product's rabbeted frame, this frame has no stop. In opening, the door edge moves away from the frame. This model 28 closer is single acting and requires an applied stop on the lock edge. Center-hung closers can also be double-acting. A center-hung door must have radiused edges. With a long level and a framing square, check to make certain the door frame is square at both top and bottom corners. Install the jamb portion of the top pivot into the header. Using adjusting screws, lower the pivot pin. Slide the aligning tool with the attached plumb line onto the pivot pin and tighten it with a tightening screw. Insert the closer into the cement case and secure it tightly with the supplied screws. Masking tape will prevent cement from getting between the closer body and the cement case. Attach the metal straps to the top of the closer with screws. Insert the leveling screws. Make sure the frame is plumb and square again. Lower the closer into the floor, suspended by the straps. Place the spindle locator over the spindle and move the closer into position adjacent to the frame. The locator is only used when the pivot point is 2 3/4 inches from the frame. Position the closer so that the center of the spindle is aligned with the plumb bob. Confirm that the cement case is square to the opening. Place the bubble level on top of the spindle. Make sure the body is level by using the leveling screws. Double check with the torpedo level. Remove the pivot alignment tool. Remove the pivot locator. Retract the pivot pin. Put the finish plate on the frame portion of the top pivot. Now you are ready to surround the case with cement. Some installers may choose to partially fill the hole with quick-dry cement and test fit the door prior to completing the installation with standard cement. Be sure to use standard rather than quick-dry products. While the cement sets, attach all needed hardware to the door. Begin with installing the door portion of the top pivot. Attach the arm plate in the mortise in the bottom of the door. This is a wood door installation, so an extra plate is attached to the underside of the door. This protects the veneer. On metal doors, this plate is not needed. Install cover plate. Install spindle collar. Lightly turn the closing and latch valves all the way clockwise. Do not over-tighten. Attach the bottom arm to the closer and secure with the spindle screw. Turn the arm to approximately 30 degrees. Bank the door slightly and set it on the closer arm. Align the door and frame portions of the top pivot. Open the door slightly to gain access to the adjusting screw and turn it clockwise to bring the pivot pin down into the door portion of the top pivot. This closer comes with centering screws in the face of the door. Insert one on each side of the door. If this was a double-acting door, the screws would help center the door in the opening. Prop the door open at 90 degrees. Tighten the arm locking screw. This screw also allows you to move the door laterally towards the lock side of the frame. Back off the latch and closing speed valves. Take a look at the gap between the door and frame. The gap should never be more than 1/8 of an inch. Verify that there is a stop on the frame. Now it's time to fine-tune the closer control valves for optimal door performance. The latch speed valve controls the door during the last 10 degrees of travel prior to latching. A door's travel speed at this point is critical to overcome weather stripping, latch bolts, and stack pressures. The closing speed valve controls the door from full open to about 10 degrees. You will want to set this to a speed you feel most comfortable with. The back check valve adjusts the amount of hydraulic resistance that begins at about 70 degrees in the opening cycle. Back check should never be turned to a point where it acts as a dead stop for the door. The closer in this installation has a selective hold open feature that turns the hold open off or on. Always adjust the closing speed first. Next, set the latch speed. And finally, back check. Slight adjustments will generally do the trick.
Next, we're going to take a look at some of the center hung floor closers. These are the double acting. So both the 30 series and the 40 series closers, they're adjustable speed. They have adjustable speed valves, of course. They are available with a non-hold open or an automatic hold open option, where to either 90 degrees or 110 degree or 100 degrees, with a maximum opening of 103 degrees. An auxiliary stop is required. Okay, the standard top pivot supplied is going to be the 340 top pivot on this. The 30 series is designed to handle a maximum door weight of 200 pounds, while the 40 series is designed to handle doors up to 300 pounds. He did a nice job of explaining the centering screws in the video and how the centering screws are located. And both of those, the 20 series and the 30 and the 40 series, are both come with the center adjustable screws located on the face of the door. Next, this is just showing you how the top pivot works. Here you have a screw, and when this screw is threaded in, it allows the pivot point to come pushing through the top of the door to engage the top of the door. Exactly. A couple more double acting floor closers I want to mention is the H40 is a double acting non-handed floor closer and are designed for exterior or interior applications. This closer can handle doors up to 1,000 pounds and up to 8 feet 6 inches tall. It has thrust bearings designed for the greater load capacity, and it is available as a non-hold open or as an automatic hold open. The arm on this closer does not have the feature that allows you to center it in the opening, so these are not recommended for pairs of doors. The center adjustability is really nice in pairs of doors to make sure that they line up equally. With these doors, since they don't have that feature, they're not recommended for that. Okay, next we're going to take a quick look, and this will probably be our last video for the day, of what it takes to install an installation case. This is quite interesting.
Using a closer-sized blocking form during the rough pour is a common way to make a hole in the floor to receive the floor closer. The disadvantage to the block method is that you are committing to a closer location before the door, frame, or walls are in place. Although not the best way to prepare for a closer, the blocking form is superior to using an actual cement case for a foundation pour installation. Because of the heaviness of the cement, the lightweight case will rise up when the pour is made. This dramatically affects the final resting place of the new case. Never use a cement case for the rough pour method. If you do choose to use this rough pour method, begin by making a frame or block that is 1 inch larger than the closer cement case on all sides, including the bottom. This frame or block can be made with 1-bys or even styrofoam. If a cement case is not available, those perimeter dimensions can be retrieved from the product installation sheets. When making the blocking form, drill 4 holes slightly larger than the diameter of the rebar. There should be holes made in all 4 sides. Use the architect's prints to get a point of reference or hold location to determine where the door frame is supposed to be. With that data, measure to the center line of the block, horizontally and vertically. Accuracy is critical. Spray paint around the blocking form to mark the location. This will allow rebar or chairs to be placed around the closer cavity so they don't interfere later in the installation. When it is time to pour the rough floor, place the blocking form in the painted spot. Insert frost pins in all 4 corners to keep the form in place horizontally. On the pins, adjust the form to correct the vertical location. Nail the pins to stabilize the block. The nail and pins will keep the form from moving during the concrete pour. Insert short rebar pieces through the holes made in the sides of the block. These should be about 7 inches long. The bars should go in only the thickness of the wood framing. This way, they will not project too far into the cavity. If you are using a styrofoam block, insert the rebar pieces. They should be inserted about 3/4 of an inch into the styrofoam. Use the frost pins to stabilize the foam block. After the concrete is set, remove the frost pins and break out the blocking form. The tips of the short rebar pieces that jut into the concrete void will help to anchor the case-setting material to the rough slab. Realize that this floor cavity, a few inches off in any direction, can mean an expensive fix. After the frames are put in place, the hole may need to be repositioned to accommodate the misalignment caused by the rough pour method. Once the cavity is correctly arranged, use a quick spotter kit to set the cement case for the quick set pour.
I think that video gives you a nice appreciation of what it takes to install. Well, since we have a few minutes left, we're going to talk about the shallow depth floor closers for a few minutes. Okay, shallow depth floor closers are ideal for supporting and controlling doors located in shallow depth areas such as upper floors of a building. The door's weight is supported by the bottom arm and the floor and the door swings with less resistance, reducing the stress on the frame, and the fasteners are going to be in shear post tension. Also, it will eliminate door sag. And you do have vertical adjustability, once again, with these shallow floor closers also. You have needle bearings for lateral forces, and the bottom arm is attached directly to the spindle for greater efficiency. Here are just a few pictures of the floor closer. The mechanical advantage increases the efficiency that it meets ADA compliant with lower forces to open up the door than a standard door closer would have. The 1-to-1 ratio of the door swing with the spindle rotation makes controlling the door more precise. And the advantage of being a concealed closer, it's aesthetically more pleasing and it's out of the way of vandalism. It's a great solution for arch top doors. Here's the first one we're looking at. This is a M51. It does allow the door to swing 180 degrees. This is single acting and it is handed, of course. This is for interior doors up to 250 pounds. It is available with a non-hold open or an automatic hold open. And this one will be supplied with the 180 top pivot is included. And we do recommend that you use an intermediate pivot with this one. Okay, the next are the models Q51 and the QT51. Surface attached bottom arms allows the closer to be removed without demounting the door. The Q closer has floor plates, so it's used with a threshold, while the QT has no floor plate supplied. This is only good for a 1 3/4 inch thick door, and it does have interchangeable spindles. This will be supplied with a 180 top pivot. Okay. One more time, this is the model HM51. This is designed to be used on stock hollow metal doors and frames with standard hinge preps, okay? But with this one here, once again, just like we talked about with the heavy duty closers, this includes 3 4.5 inch ball bearing type door closers with a 3/4 inch offset on this. So once again, the door closer is going to be controlling the door's motion, but the hinges are actually going to be holding the weight of the door. These are recommended for doors up to about 250 pounds and only for 1 3/4 inch thick doors. And once again, it is available for non-hold open or an automatic hold open. We're going to see one last video on what it takes to install one of these closers, one of the shallow closers, and then we'll call it a day.
Multi-story buildings often use shallow concrete with a metal decking for their subfloors. When situations call for a heavy-duty floor closer, a special cement case allows the use of a closer that is deeper than the slab material. A cast iron case with 2 wings welded to each side of the case is the solution. These angles add stability when the closer case cannot be surrounded on all 5 surfaces by concrete. When using this cement case, the accuracy of measurement from the reference point on the architectural drawings to the location of the proposed door opening is critical. This video shows 2 different ways to install these special cases. Begin either option by drawing an outline of the bottom of the cement case on the decking. Using that as a template, cut out the decking. This creates a cavity for the case. Measure along the pour forms to determine where the finished floor line will be and its distance to the decking. The first method is block and wedge. This uses blocks for positioning and wedges to secure the case to the decking. Make 4 blocks of wood the height from under the top of the angles to the floor line. Use the blocks as spacers. Position them under the angle pieces of the cement case. The bottom of the cement case and the closer will actually hang into the plenum. Once the case is inserted into the decking, use wedges at each end to keep the case in place. Use easily removable tape to cover the gap between the case and the decking. This prevents the cement from slipping through. It also prohibits the blocks and wedges from moving during the concrete pour. You are now ready to pour the concrete. Remember, the side angles of the cement case must be completely covered for solid anchoring in the slab. A better way to install the case is the screed method. Place 2 screeds of wood between 2 pour forms. These pieces of wood placed on each side of the case cutout should be the height of the marked line for the finished floor. To make sure the case is set level, a quick spotter kit is an excellent tool to save time. From the kit, attach straps to the top of the cement case. Drop the closer into the decking with these quick spotter straps resting on the wooden boards. The case will sit below the decking. Using a torpedo level, make sure the case is on the same plane as the boards. If it isn't, leveling screws in the quick spotter kit will help. Nail the straps in place. This will prevent the case from moving during the concrete pour. With easy release tape, seal the decking cutout, top perimeter of the closer, and the quick spotter straps. This prevents the cement from slipping through the decking. It also prohibits the concrete from getting into the case itself. You are ready to pour the concrete.
Just a quick look at the shallow center hung floor closers that we have. The Model 50 is a single acting shallow floor closer capable of handling up to 250 pounds with a 4-foot wide door. The 50 is shipped with the centering arm. So you have the visible screws on the face of the door, but it allows you to adjust it in the center of the door. The Model 5040 is a single acting floor closer designed for full glass stores. The glass can be 3/8 of an inch up to 1/2 of an inch. And the 5020 is a double acting, so it swings in both directions. All 3 of these floor closers have separate closing and latching valve and back check valves, of course. And the optional hold open is also available on here. These are the independent hung. So the F53 is a single acting interior independent hung, like we talked about, where this is going to be used with a standard door prepped for a 4.5 inch hinge, but this will be supplied with special 3/4 of an inch offset hinges with this. And thank you for your patience on this, but this brings us to the end of the presentation. I'd like to thank you today for your time and consideration. Thank you, and don't forget, ASA Abloy Academy is giving webinars every afternoon, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.